people have asked me, will P2B have done anything different if he won the election? I said no. He would have removed subsidy from day one also. What I'm saying is that the government should be more disciplined to use the money they have removed in the subsidy to put it in infrastructure, so that people that you have taken from them, those who are flying private jet from subsidy money, their business is spoiled. But if you collect that money from them and squander it yourself and put it in a venture that is frivolous in itself, you are from the same tomb to another tomb. You are still in the same graveyard.
This sounds like the narrative of the current administration, but to be fair to Cosmas Maduka, he ended up contradicting himself, saying things that P2B wouldn't do, like Tinubu is currently doing. Things like buying private jets and squandering money on non-priority projects. So it's not a case of swallowing the narrative of the administration hook, line and sinker. He has his own mind. Maybe he was just ill-informed about what P2B said during the campaigns, how he will tackle the issue of petrol subsidy. Anyway, for those who don't know or continue to believe the narrative maliciously being spread by people in power, P2B has always maintained that he will never remove petrol subsidy 100% without tackling the issue of corruption in the NNPC. At many fora, he made comparisons between Nigeria and Pakistan. He always maintained that the two countries have around the same amount of vehicles, and in Pakistan they don't consume up to 30 million liters of petrol every month. He found issues with the figures brandished by NNPC, so he promised during the campaigns that he must first of all deal with the corruption, because the figures don't lie, they are obviously fraudulent. Yes, they've been since Buhari's years, and it doesn't seem like there's an end in sight. Under Buhari, NNPC started paying a paltry $200 or $300 million monthly to the Federation account. They started handling the issue of subsidy by themselves. Unlike what was obtained before Buhari, they started doing the expenditure by themselves. They would just render account to the government. Unlike what used to happen before, when the government used to pay for subsidy directly, NNPC became the sole importer of petroleum products in Nigeria. So they will pay for the importation, sort out the subsidy by themselves, and sell at the price approved by the government. So all these are shrouded in secrecy. That was why P2B said that he must dismantle the corruption in NNPC. And because the monthly revenue NNPC paid to the Federation account under Buhari's administration was so low, Buhari had to resort to printing more naira to meet up with government expenditure. In total, he printed more than equivalent of $50 billion. Up till today, no one can say, this is where Buhari invested the money. They can't point to any infrastructure where he invested $50 billion. $50 billion is a huge amount of money. And the current administration is doing exactly the same thing. They are also piling debt on Nigerians. Even last year, they printed money to the tune of 10 trillion naira. Buhari should have increased the revenue of NNPC, but instead he chose to run away from the responsibility. He chose to print $50 billion. Despite printing that huge amount of money, he still led Nigeria to 2 recessions. Nigerians are still suffering from the effects of what he did. As commander-in-chief, he had the police, the army, all security agencies. He couldn't use them to secure Nigeria's waterways. He couldn't stop oil theft. He couldn't do anything to make sure NNPC at least were able to meet up their OPEC quota. The more crude oil they pump, the more revenue they generate. But instead, they couldn't improve on their export numbers. Instead, the around 1 million barrels per day or less than that they used to pump at the time, on top of that, they will still deduct the subsidy money and pay the rest to the Federation account. So they were on a free-for-all, and Buhari, being so incompetent, despite being the Minister of Petroleum, he couldn't question any of them. Instead, he abandoned his role and responsibility and started printing naira. This was what P2B said he must tackle if he takes the mantle of leadership in this country. You see, Nigerians have been conditioned by successive leaderships in this country that subsidy payments are a waste of government resources. Yes, but in actual fact, they are not. Even looking at what Cosmas Maduka said, he made it look as if subsidy payments were a waste, and that Nigeria must do away with them. But that's not the reality. The reality is, if many services are subsidized in Nigeria today, within 5 years, not even up to 10 years, it will spur massive economic growth in Nigeria. Why? It is because Nigeria is not even up to an emerging economy. Nigerians are poor, so if you make services affordable to them, it will lead to massive growth. It's very simple. If people are already down, there's nothing you can do to lift them up except giving them affordable services. That's the only way out. We are not even a middle income economy, not to talk of low income economy. So how are Nigerians expected to lift themselves out of poverty while being very, very poor? Loans are very expensive in Nigeria. More than 26% you are expected to pay on a loan. How is any business supposed to survive that? So anywhere you turn, it is one huge hill that is insurmountable. If you can't get a loan, how do you set up a business? You might have the idea, but to implement it will be a serious problem. There is no constant and reliable electricity supply. How are manufacturers or SMEs supposed to survive? When you turn to petrol as an alternative energy to buy and use in your genset, you are expected to pay above 1,000 naira per liter. How are you going to survive, knowing that what actually drives manufacturing is high purchasing power, demand for the goods? When people continue making demands, manufacturers expand to meet up the demand, and with more competition, it will continue to drive down the cost of the goods. That's how it works. But in our own case, everywhere anyone turns, you must meet an insurmountable mountain that you cannot climb. So how is the economy supposed to grow? Subsidy is a necessity to Nigeria's economic survival right now, because without subsidizing all the high costs of doing business, like the expensive cost of clearing goods, they just added 4%, an additional fee that you will pay after the duty is calculated based on the current exchange rate. So anywhere you turn, even manufacturers that depend on importing raw materials from abroad, they are forced to pay high duties. How are they going to survive? So that is why a local manufacturer is not competitive with a manufacturer in faraway China. Despite the fact that these goods in China, they have paid duty, they pay freight to bring the goods to Nigeria, all these additional costs, still the goods are cheaper than the one manufactured next door. Yes, many people live in nearby factories in Lagos, for instance. You might be seeing the factory where they are manufacturing goods you buy in the market, but to your surprise, the goods manufactured in that factory, they are more expensive than the one manufactured in faraway China. This is what the government should be working on, how to make local goods competitive. If you cannot compete with manufacturers in China or Southeast Asia, how can you compete with people in West Africa where they have better power supply? At least it is more reliable there. So these are the problems. The only way to save the situation is subsidy. They need to subsidize essential services, all the ones that manufacturers need, in order to make products more competitive, not just affordable. Now, the government doesn't actually need to subsidize petroleum products in Nigeria. Since it is our own product, we don't buy it, we have it here in Nigeria. The government can allocate the quantity that Nigeria consumes every day or every month. They can move that to the refineries, whether Dangote refinery or all the others, and just recover the cost of refining them. Yes, and sell them to Nigerians. This is a way of gaining advantage because you have the product. If you are a farmer and the breadwinner of your family, you can't tell them, no, we will sell all the farm produce we harvest and start buying at the market price. It doesn't make any sense. Your people can't starve because you want to make money. No. So while they are doing that, they still need to reduce corruption to the barest minimum. NNPC continues to deceive Nigerians because it doesn't make any sense that they tell Nigerians that all the refineries are now working, but the past month alone they imported more than 200 million liters of petrol. Which one are Nigerians supposed to believe? You have a working refinery and you continue importing petroleum products. Now let's hear what P2B said at Chatham House in London during the campaigns. not hoping that this will end the argument once and for all, because the people always spreading this narrative, they never argue in good faith.
What you're saying is about the big boys who are selling generators. Let me assure you what we've been campaigning on. Our campaign, you have heard them say we don't have structures. That is the structure we're trying to destroy. Structure of criminality. That is what I mentioned. That Nigeria is being held captive. That structure is structure that impoverished Nigeria. We will dismantle it. It will not be there. I assure you of that. We're going to turn around the power sector. Nigeria generates about, today, 56,000 megawatts of electricity for 200 million people. And South Africa, the second biggest in terms of economy in the continent, 5 to 6,000, that's 5 to 6,000, sorry. And South Africa, the second biggest economy, 60 million people, generates about 40 to 50,000. And South Africa, in the past 3 months, have declared emergency in power and said anybody can generate up to 100 megawatts without license. So somebody who is 60 million, generating about over 40,000, declared emergency. What do you think somebody with 2 million people generating 5 to 6,000 will do? War. I'm going to declare war on power and I'll solve it. Anybody who stands on the way, so be it. Bringing back foreign investor is very simple, Paul. Foreign investor is like bee and honey. All you need is to create honey. The way bee will find the place is very simple. Foreign capital is scared of corruption. Is scared of bad policies. Is scared of where there's no rule of law. You need to put a regulatory environment that makes it conducive. You need to secure it. That is at the heart of what Dati and I are offering. We will build that intangible assets of securing the country, making sure that we govern to rule of law. We will fight corruption. Dati have a record that is the only National Assembly member who refused to buy property of government when it was offered to all National Assembly members. You can go and look at his record. If you have seen anywhere he has compromised or put himself in a transactional position. And I'll stop running. I know how I approached him, and I told him, I and you owe it to save our people. That's why we came together, and we came back and said, we'll work as a team. We'll solve this problem. Go and check my record. I've governed the state for 8 years, and I've challenged everybody. Paul, you were there. I've been the only governor till today. The day I left office, I was not owing salary, pension, gratuity, or any contract or any supplier. And I left with 3 banks in Nigeria, which I say every day. Access Bank of Nigeria, Fidelity Bank of Nigeria, and Diamond Bank. I left over $150 million. I didn't say naira. And I have over 30 billion naira. And Anambra State, you can go and verify anyway. I've never had a bottle. Anambra State have never bought me. There's no land allocated directly or indirectly by me, and I signed over several thousands of CFO. Anambra has never bought me a bottle of water since I left office. So you can go. We will fight and stop corruption. The first thing about stopping corruption is yourself. If you're not involved, your wife is not involved, your family is not involved, those around you are not involved, you reduce it by over 50%. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm sure, Paul, you know that. We are committed. We can't disappoint these youths. We must build a new Nigeria. And we'll deal with that. Investors will come back. Those who left, even the young people who are today living, they'll come back. We want to bring them back. Nigerians are prepared to come back if they can find that they have a country to go back to. This green passport, people must be proud to use it.